Stick around or skip ahead to learn about the time I bought a vehicle from this guy about 10 years ago. His name is Spike. Hello my friends, thank you for being here for another video. Today I'm going to talk about some of the ridiculous cars I've owned in my past. In fact, I've only owned ridiculous cars. I haven't owned a single normal person car in my life. And I've had several cars. Okay, actually my very first car was pretty cool actually. It ran pretty good. It was a 98 Sonata, I believe. It had no problems. It was a nice car. But soon after my parents bought it for me, I was 18 years old. I moved to British Columbia from Ontario, like not long after they bought it for me. And so I just ended up leaving it there for my parents. When I moved to BC, that's when my string of ridiculous cars started. Actually, no, I owned a Ford Escort that also ran really good. It was a nice car, but the guy who sold it to me was a crazy character. Okay, our test drive was to go to the drugstore so he could pick up his Oxycontin prescription. Actually, I got the idea to do this video because I saw that very same guy recently in a documentary about the fentanyl crisis in Vancouver. He was like one of the main people they interviewed. And so I thought of that guy and I thought of the crazy time he sold me the car. It wasn't a quick, clean interaction. Like this guy was in my life for several weeks through no fault of my own. And by the way, this guy's name is Spike. His name is Spike. And I don't know, I think a ground rule in life should be just don't trust people who are named after sharp or pointy objects, you know, spike or blade or anything of that nature. Just avoid those people. Anyway, Spike was a nice guy actually.
And nobody gives a fuck.
And like I said, he sold me a good car that ran well. So I bought that car from Spike a little later into my 20s. Up until then, I had several ridiculous cars, just one after another. They all did something really wrong with them, but they were all quite comical in their own way. My friends would always make fun of me because I always had like the most beater ass, like shitty, cheap Craigslist cars you could find. And they all had terrible problems. All right, so when I moved to BC, the first car I got when I moved out here was a classic. It was an 88 Le Baron. I mean, for the name alone, you gotta buy it, which really isn't a good name for the car. It's like not a good car. It's not something a real Baron would drive. You know, they'd be in like a Cadillac or, you know, a Rolls Royce or something good, not a Chrysler. So I don't know what they were thinking with that, but it's kind of a cool car. It like had a lot of features on it that were modern at the time, like a digital speedometer, and it was a convertible, and I forget what else. It had some weird like novel features and stuff, but it was a funny car. It was I always rode with the top down, of course, even in like autumn because I could. And yeah, it was a great car, other than the fact that the transmission was shot as hell, and so it couldn't make it up hills, which is a problem if you want to, you know, go uptown, reach higher elevations possibly. And the funny thing about this city is it's very hilly, and I used to live like right near the coast, you know, sea level, and basically everything just goes uphill. It's one of those cities, like a big hill on a coast. And I lived at the bottom and my car couldn't go up hills. In fact, Oxford Street is just a few blocks away from here. I think it's one of the steepest hills in the lower mainland, which I forget the grade. It's like 20 something percent, which is pretty high. They got higher ones like in America. They have like some crazy ones like 30%. Anyways, there's no chance my car can make it up there. So I used to like have to find clever routes to, you know, slowly creep my way uptown. And the Le Baron, it was a piece of shit, to be honest with you. I did love the convertible and the name was funny. Telling people I drove a Le Baron, they're like, "Oh, what's that?" And then the story of how I got rid of the car is funny too. My father and I were going to look at a car. He was looking at a car. I think my father was looking at a car. This guy, yeah, that's right. He had a Cadillac that my dad was looking at. A used Cadillac, like an old Eldorado. So we go up there in the Le Baron. And when we get there and we're looking at the car, and this guy's very old. He's like 85 maybe, senile. And he sees the Le Baron and his eyes just lit right up. He loved it. He loved the Le Baron. I don't know what it was about it that he loved. Something about it, he was drawn to it and he had to have it. He had to have it. I don't know if he was like a really smart car guy, knew a lot about cars, and he's just like, yeah, I want this car. I know exactly what it is and I want it. Or if he was just like delusional and didn't really know shit about cars and he was like a kid, like, ooh, the top's down. I want it. And he doesn't know it's like an 88 Chrysler Le Baron, which I paid like $800 for. I couldn't tell. But he was working on his like Eldorado like when we got there. So I think he knew a thing or two about cars. That's what I tell myself anyways, because here's what we did. Well, he initiated it. He said, I will trade you this Cadillac for that Le Baron, which no one has ever said that sentence in the history of humanity. But okay, the Cadillac was very used, so it was like a couple grand. And this Le Baron, I paid less than $1,000 for it, so it was not a fair deal. We told him that. I told him that. I said, I didn't pay that much for this car. It's not a good car. It has transmission problems. I didn't tell him, it's not going to make it up Oxford Street, but he lived out in Langley. It's flatter out there. And old people don't go that far. So I told him it had tranny problems. And I told you, wait, you can't say that word. I told it had transmission problems. And I told him, it's not a fair deal, this is probably worth more. But he wanted that car. He wanted the Le Baron. And so I'm like, all right, we'll do that then. And so we did that. My dad got his car. I got cash. And then I ended up, putting that towards another car, which... wait till you hear about that one. But yeah, so we got the Cadillac. It ended up fucking sucking too. It ended up overheating and we scrapped it eventually. But the old man, he called us like 2 or 3 weeks after the deal and he's like, this thing's transmission is garbage. And I'm like, yeah, well, yeah, hey, we told you it was not good. And basically I I let it lie. And do I feel bad? No, because the car he sold us fucking sucked. So fuck him. Anyways, that's the Le Baron. I don't know what happened of it. He probably scrapped it, I'm sure. Now, okay, what did I get next? The gas chamber or the go forward mobile? These are loving nicknames for my terrible cars. I believe it was the go forward mobile. And I liked this car for a long time. It was a truck, an SUV if you want to get technical. It was a 99 Nissan Pathfinder truck. This SUV, by the way, when it died, at the time of its death, it had 500,000 kilometers on the engine, which is crazy. That's a lot of mileage, kilometerage. It had a lot of clicks on it. By the way, this water bottle, they were all out of the large ones, so I had to get this one. Okay, so the Pathfinder, it was about $1,000, another cheapo junker piece of shit. And it ran pretty good when I got it though, actually, until a big problem happened. Another transmission problem. The fucking... Oh, I forgot about that car. I have another crazy car too. Jeez. Okay. I have so many crazy cars. Okay, so the reverse stopped working on the Pathfinder, which is a real pain in the ass. If you want to back out of places, you end up in situations where it sucks. And you probably think, well, if you're clever and you make sure you don't, back yourself into a corner. You can't back yourself into a corner because you can't even fucking back up. You can't even use that phrase. You have to, if you're clever with it, you can make sure that you're not in a situation where you have to back up. And I was, for the most part, pretty clever with it. At work, I would drive into the stalls that sort of were on a lean so I could go in neutral and roll out, or in parking spots that I had to find two that were together so I can pull through. And, all these tactics I had to learn, which was fine, but every once in a while you'd fuck up. You'd either forget or, you're just not rolling back. The incline isn't steep enough or just whatever the situation may be. I found myself in that situation many times. And I had a trick though. If I was by myself, what I would do, this is so ridiculous. I would open the door, right? And put one foot out. I'm quite tall, so I could reach the ground. And then I would put it in neutral. And then I would push with my foot and push my car back like a fucking skateboard. I was like the Flintstone car. The Flintstone car where they have the feet at the bottom, like doo 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 doo. I don't know if that makes that noise, but like it seems like it might make that noise. You know, the car where they have the it's powered by their feet. It was like the Flintstones car or skateboard. They're both funny comparisons, but I put a positive spin on it. I figured, you know what, life's all about going forward anyways. I don't have time for the past. I can't be looking back. I can't be going backwards. And so I called it the Go Forward Mobile, and it was all about positivity and forwardness. Except when you got stuck. And I forget what happened to it. Something with the engine, though. It was a cheap car, so I scrapped it. And that was the end of that. Okay, the next one was the Dodge Neon, a 96, I believe. Another really old car, and it was a real junker. This one was a junker. This one was the junkiest piece of shit of all of them, I think. Maybe. Possibly. It could very well be. It was so dinged up and beat up. It was like this bright... I'll show you a picture of it. I'll try to find one. But now I'm not sure what happened in this car's past, but something happened to this car. Okay, our first clue. I'll tell you what happened, but okay. The first thing I noticed was the gas gauge did not work, which is a huge pain in the ass. You got to basically always keep gas with you, and then you just got to calculate in your head, and it's just really annoying. You know, it's a hassle. But you know, it's not the end of the world. I survived, and I actually never ran out of gas anywhere, so it wasn't that hard. So the big problem with this car, though, was that the interior smelled heavily of gasoline, not just like a faint odor. It was heavy gas in your face. You know, fumes. There was fumes in that car, noxious fumes that would give you headaches. Kill brain cells, I'm sure. Killed millions, probably. My friends hated the car. They called it the gas chamber, and they would say it in a German accent. The gas chamber. You know, Nazi jokes, which I don't like that. I don't like Nazis. I'm against Nazis, and what they did with the gas was... I did not make up this nickname. They called it the gas chamber. I thought it was inappropriate, but that was the big joke with that one. So the gas gauge not working, I bet the previous owner constantly filling up gas and like running out of gas, jerry cans, all this. The nozzles never fit, you know, it's the weird yellow nozzle. I could just see, like, you know, probably one day he just spilt it all, or he didn't put the nozzle on back right, or he put the jug sideways in his car, or whatever. A whole bunch of gas leaked out one day into the interior of that car, and you do not get that smell out. That car is so junky. One day I was in a parking lot and I came back to my car after shopping, and there was this lady there. She was all frantic and stuff, and she's like, "Oh, is this your car?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "I'm so sorry, I hit it." I'm like, "Oh, that's okay." And she was freaking out. She's like, "My husband just bought me this car. It was like this new Hyundai Genesis or whatever. Nice cars. And it was brand new. And she had like a dent or whatever. And she's like, so I'll give you my information or whatever, all that." And I'm like, "Wait, no. I was looking at my car. I could not even tell which dent she added to it. There was literally so many, and I cared so little about that car." So I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not going to get it fixed. Please don't worry." And then she's like, "Oh, thank you. My husband was going to kill me." She said he was going to murder her. You know, can't let those rates go up, but she's still going to have to explain the dent. So I hope she's alive still. And yeah, I forget what happened to that car, but scrapped it eventually. All right, the next car, enter Spike. Oh boy. So this guy actually just lived a few blocks down from me. I found him on Craigslist, I'm pretty sure. And he had a cheap Ford Escort for sale. And it was another 20th century car. It was like a 96 or 97 Ford Escort station wagon, the hatchback. That's right, it was, and I think maybe still is, the ugliest car ever made. It's horrible looking. It just looks horrible. It looks gross. Whoever designed that car paid zero attention to design. It was like a complete afterthought. But I like the name, the Escort. You know, it reminds me of prostitutes, and prostitutes are okay in my book. And okay, so the car was great for the price. And my brother and I went to go look at it, and we got there, and this guy comes out. You've seen him. He has long hair, and he's crazy. And he seemed like clean in that documentary. He was not clean at this point. So he was like on heroin or oxys or, you know, opiates anyway. And he was all straggly, and you could barely understand a word he was saying. And at one point, I don't know how it happened, but his false teeth, he kept taking them out. They ended up on the passenger seat of our car that he was trying to sell us. And my bro and I are like nudging each other, like, pointing at the false teeth. Eventually he found them, he spotted them, and he picked them up and he washed them off with a hose and he just threw them back in his mouth, which I thought was funny. And he was a friendly guy, a real chatter, very talkative. He's telling me a story about how when he was a kid, in like the 70s, I guess, people would drive by him and throw food at him out of their windows from their trucks, and they would call him a long hair. They would say, "Hey, get out of our town, long hair," and they would throw food at him. And he's like, "It's hard being like a long hair like me." I've never heard people with long hair being referred to as long hairs, like they're a breed of human or something. So I thought that was funny. People are just throwing, that's not funny, that's kind of sad, but poor old Spike. He was telling us all these, he was very talkative. I just wanted to get the car and go home, right? And so eventually we did, no. We took a test drive first. The funny thing is he wanted to go to the Shoppers Drug Mart near us, a drugstore, and fill out his prescription for his oxys. He wanted to get his pills. And so I took him there. He got his pills. It's kind of sad, actually. He got into a motorbike accident, which he mentions in the documentary too. And I'm like, I knew that. I had the inside scoop. But he got into one and he had like brain damage from it and he couldn't drive anymore. He couldn't get a license. So I drove him there, got his prescription. And then a couple weeks later, I ran into his buddy who was also at the sale at a grocery store. And we said hi, and he said, yeah, that guy actually, Spike, he actually used to be very smart. He used to be like a computer engineer or something like that until the accident. And then, he started taking pills because of the accident. And so that's pretty sad, I think. He's a very nice guy. Very nice guy. He wanted to take me and my brother to AC/DC cover concerts in Vancouver, which, no thanks, but it was a nice gesture, and it was a shocking surprise to see him in that documentary out of nowhere. Anyways, he sold us the car. I go home. I'm liking the car. It worked pretty good. It just needed a new flex pipe, and I was happy with it. But about a week later, he showed up at my house. And it was weird. He was dressed in totally different clothes. He was more like gothic this time, which I'm like, okay. He went from like hard, like rocker AC/DC guy to like gothic. That's cool, whatever. But has nothing to do with anything. Just that's an interesting thing, I thought. And he was very agitated. He was not happy. He had some papers with him, like the ownership or something, the insurance. I don't know what it was, but he was confused with the papers. He said, you got my paper, or I need the paper. You didn't fill it out proper, or something like that. There was some confusion. I don't think there was. I'm pretty sure everything was fine, but he was freaking out. I'm like, okay. I'm kind of weirded out. I'm like, why are you here? Like, that's odd. And eventually we sorted it out. But it wasn't the first time he came there. He came back like a couple times, and he was in and out of my life for like a month. I just wanted to buy the car and go home. But no, Spike loved to talk, and he was just he was an interesting fellow. But it was not a clean, smooth transaction. Like, look at this guy and tell me if you think smooth transactions are in this guy's wheelhouse. Not a chance. My final car, which this one actually just broke down last year. This car was crazy messed up. It was a 98 Subaru Suzuki Gran Vitara, and it was like a small SUV. Decent car, normally good on gas. But anyways, I bought this SUV off this older lady. She didn't know anything about the car really. She just got a new one, and it was running fine at first, just like all my other cars. Except soon I realized there was a leak in the gas tank, which in hindsight explained the giant gas puddle around her car when I went and bought it. Anyways, the car would slowly leak gas. It wasn't a huge problem. It just cost more money to keep it filled up. And, I left puddles wherever I went. But this car at one point became fucking possessed by Lucifer himself. Okay, this car started to have a very dangerous malfunction. I don't know if you've ever had a problem, usually it's with like cam sensors or something, where when you're in neutral, your car starts revving the engine for some reason. I'm not sure why it is. And it's not like that big of a problem, but it could lead to other problems. Apparently, it did here. My car would start doing that whenever I put it in park. It would start revving its engine until I shut it off or, put it in drive. But the problem was if I put it in drive and the engine was revving, it would, really jolt into gear. And it was the only way to get it into drive though. So I think that started damaging something. Again, I don't know too much about cars, how they work on the inside. And eventually it started doing this thing where when I was at a red light with my foot on the brake, it would start revving the engine like it would when I was in park. And it's not a problem when it's in park. The engine can rev, it's fine. But if you're in drive and your foot's on the brake and the engine starts revving, your back wheels are going to start spinning out. You know, your car's wanting to go forward. And as soon as you take your foot off of the brake, it's going to shoot forward. And it started doing that just mildly, very mildly. When I was coming up to an intersection, I'd put on the brake and I'd feel it fighting the brake a little bit. And I'd really press on the brake and it would stop. And I'm like, okay, that's dangerous. I got to get that fixed, you know. But I was just hoping it would go away. Like a computer, maybe it would just fix itself. And so it started getting worse and worse. Like I'd pull up to an intersection and sometimes it started getting really bad. Like the engine was really revving and I would stop and the back wheels would start spinning just a little bit, like it's like skittering kind of. And then when the light went green, I would like slowly ease off the brake and it'd still like shoot forward pretty much. And then it got really bad. And one day I should not have been driving it at this point, but I needed to get to school or whatever. And I pull up to an intersection and the back wheels are just full out fucking spinning out. I'm like spinning out and the light's red and I'm ready to go. I'm like, come on, go green, go green, go green. And as soon as it goes green, I let my foot off the pedal and my car just shoots through the goddamn intersection like a NASA space rocket. And the guy perpendicular, the look on his face, he was like, he was shocked. He was worried. He was terrified for his life. It must have been quite the scene. It was dangerous. I pulled it over. It was spinning. I shut off the car and no one died. And I looked under the hood and I noticed the accelerator wire was getting caught somehow. And it got progressively worse and worse. So if you pulled the string up, it would fix it. But then eventually it would get fucked up again. And so you couldn't go like super far before the problem got really bad. You had to stop every once in a while to fix it. And one day I was driving for a while and I didn't fix it for a while and I was just getting home and I had to stop the car now and shut everything off quickly. And that's a dangerous process, you know, when you let it go for that long. I knew that goddamn wire was just wedged like way up there and the engine was just going to go. And I get down into my parking garage and I go to put it in park and the car's like so trying to go forward while it's in park and braked and stuff. It's just like bouncing around. And I was like bouncing around like the cars in my parking garage, like around pillars and stuff. And eventually I like pull into my spot. I'm gonna smash the wall and I shut it off. It stopped working because of that. Like one day it just stopped turning on because whatever was happening to it was not good for it. So it just fucked the engine up. And yeah, those are my ridiculous cars. They've all been terrible. The Sonata was okay, but I only had it for like half a year. You know, I should probably invest a little more, but whatever. I've been taking public transit lately. That's okay. That's okay. And it's a very good system in the Lower Mainland, which I'm thankful for that. I like to be around the people and I like to transit. Maybe I'll track down Spike and see if he's got another vehicle for me. Oh boy, okay. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed my ridiculous story and I hope you have a great night. And thanks for the viewership. And that's all. Cheers. Have a good one, everyone. Cheers. See you guys soon.